Hoosier Nation, look, let's not sugarcoat it. Let's not put lipstick on a pig. That was a god-awful performance from this football team on Saturday. It's funny, we keep sitting here talking about how it's bad luck and misfortune that Indiana's in the same conference and the same division as Michigan and Ohio State and Penn State. And then when you turn the tables, they did wet the bed. They, I guess, cleaned it up just barely in time to knock off the Akron Zips. IU defeated Akron 29-27. We're going to go into our immediate thoughts, immediate reaction. We're not going to beat a dead horse, really. I think all of you kind of know how to feel coming out of that game. But we're going to put a twist on it. We're going to play a little fact or fiction with IU football, talking about some big picture questions, preview Maryland, give you some Big Ten picks this week. Talk about so much more here on episode 308 of the Hoosier Sound. We're the official podcast of Indiana HQ. We're recording this edition of the Hoosier Sound on Wednesday, September 27th, 2023. I'm your host, Nithin Krishnan. Here with me tonight is my normal co-host, Matt Lukens. Matt, I don't really know where to start. The floor is yours. Indiana wins. That's the point of the game, but everything else did not look good at all.
I'm so glad you're like, I don't know where to start, so I'll just hand it off to you. Like, I know where to start this conversation. I will say this. In my, oh God, how long has it been? I was gonna say 10 years. In my 10 years of watching Indiana football, that was the single worst viewing experience I have had.
And we've seen a lot.
I've been in person for IU to blow like a 30-point lead to Rutgers.
Oh yeah. I remember that one. I forgot about that. Oh God.
Yeah.
That was
I've been to some terrible football games. Let me tell you.
Wow.
I have personally.
That was like bad.
I've watched even worse on TV. I've watched some great ones. I've been to some great ones as well. But that one took the cake on Saturday. And I'm very glad that it was not on national television. For the program's sake. I mean, it was buried on Big Ten Network on a slate that was
overflow.
Amazing. Yeah. It was perfect timing for Indiana to like not be a national.
That's real quick. That's funny you mentioned that because you had Penn State, Iowa, you had Ohio State, Notre Dame, and you also had on BTN Minnesota getting egg on their face against Northwestern.
Yeah, it was buried. It was behind a lot of different crap that was going on. So the world was not paying attention until overtime. Until it went to overtime, people were like, "Oh, it's an overtime game on. Oh, let's go check in what's going on here before Pac-12 After Dark starts."
Yeah.
So I'm glad that was a thing because it definitely saved the program from a lot more egg on its face, and like of course winning helped a lot as well. That being said, Akron is one of the worst like non-power 5.
They're one of the worst teams in FBS.
They're one of the worst teams in FBS. They have sucked for a decent amount of time now. And the fact that IU was in a slugfest with them
Akron was dominating. Like
no.
It wasn't even 50-50.
It was Akron was the better team. And that's including, them going through 3 QBs in the same game because one goes out injured, the second one goes out injured, the third one comes in, looks like crap, the first one comes back and ends up leading them to almost victory. Drove me nuts.
Oh man.
The defense took about 5 steps back. I don't know how. At the end of the game, they were just running QB draws.
That's it.
That was it, and there was no QB spy to be seen.
No adjustments. I don't know what happened there.
No adjustments to that. When they're running literally the same play over and over again. The offense looked atrocious. The play calling is just.
Well, let's talk about that because. Instead of just talking play call, I wrote down a few things that really bothered me. So
go ahead.
The first drive, and you guys got to understand, like there was a lot going on starting at 7:30 on Saturday night. You can have the faith in both of us that we watched every play of IU's game against Akron from the first drive to the end. And the first 2 plays of the game Walt Bell called inside runs to Jalen Lucas. And that instantly gave me indigestion that I was hoping would go away over the course of 2 hours or 3 hours. It did not happen. It was a sign of things to come. Why are we running Jalen Lucas into the middle of a developing offensive line instead of what you had just learned a week earlier, which was he is an unstoppable weapon out of the backfield or lined up in the slot in the passing game? That beats me. I understand Josh Henderson's out, but that can't be the option. Like, you can't start your game after Taven Jackson goes crazy and after Jalen Lucas is a killer pass option. You cannot run Jalen Lucas between the tackles the first 2 plays. If you want to run Christian Turner, be my guest, not Jalen Lucas. Why is 1 yard so hard? Why is Indiana the worst goal line offense I've ever seen in my lifetime? And I am a Chicago Bears fan.
That's a
I have
very
never
low bar.
seen, like, why is Indiana routinely getting stuffed at the 2 yard line, at the 1 yard line? It is unbelievable. And Walt Bell tried a sneak with Taven Jackson. He tried to bring Donovan McCulley in as a Wildcat quarterback. He tried to run Christian Turner. Nothing's working. Now, you could say you could do the Eagles tush push sneak. Push. You could try some more pre-snap motion to move to give the defense something to think about. You could try, I don't know. Why is 1 yard so hard? And just in general, Matt, like, I didn't see enough play action. I didn't see enough Cam Camper. I didn't see enough Omar Cooper. I didn't see enough Taven Jackson coming out of a game where he was awesome. What is wrong right now? What is going on with this play calling?
I think what's going wrong with the play calling is that Walt Bell doesn't understand where his strengths lie. Even though we see it.
Indiana's not a bad offense.
No, and it doesn't take a high football IQ to watch IU for, like, I don't know, an hour of game time on offense and be like, you know what? They have really good receivers for a school like IU. Like, as far as like a talent level, Cam Camper's great, Omar Cooper's great. Guess who's great out of the backfield or out of the slot position? Jalen Lucas, right? So they have really good matchups there for the talent level that IU can recruit from. Secondly, they have a very promising QB who can throw the ball very well
down the field.
Down the field, he can get vertical in the passing game if he's given time. And you have a much improved offensive line that can give the quarterback time to throw the ball. What you don't have is an offensive line that is dominant enough to run the ball, nor did you have a healthy running back that is able to run through the tackles. But in the press conference post that game, Walt Bell goes, we're a run-first offense with a little bit of option sprinkled in.
No, you're not.
That's not what the team is. Like, look at I enjoy the fact that you want to run the ball first. All right. That is, to establish the run, to open up the pass. It's the tale as old as time. And it's a trick as old as the book goes, right? That is how you set up offense.
Indiana has the 12th best success rate in college football throwing the football. They have the 125th best success rate in college football when running the football.
It doesn't take a rocket scientist to figure out this offense.
You're not a run-first football team. And if you are, run between the tackles with Josh Henderson and Christian Turner, run outside the tackles with Jalen Lucas, and dump the option with Taven Jackson, at least.
Yes, I stopped running speed options. I fucking hate speed options.
To Christian Turner. They ran a speed option to Christian Turner. No, you ran a speed option to Jalen Lucas.
I can't understand. I don't understand how you can be so incompetent at your job. I'm just going to say it. I can't understand how you're so not just play calling.
And the crazy thing is, all right, sorry, go ahead.
No, I was going to say we have talent and you're just using the talent in incorrect ways. It's almost like he had, like Walt Bell has a challenge to see how badly he can call games. Like it's almost like he's doing it on purpose.
I think what may be happening behind the scenes, especially when you go into a game like Akron where you know you're the favorite, you might be going into that game saying, "Hey, let's focus on our weaknesses." Right. And let's face it, even going into even before the Akron game, Indiana's weakness was running the football. We saw it against Ohio State, saw it against Louisville. They struggled running the football. So maybe going into the game, the plan was, hey, let's try to figure this out. Let's try to run the football. Let's try to gain an advantage up front. I'm okay with that. If you want to run the ball against Akron, be my guest. But it has to be stuff that makes sense. And I understand Josh Henderson didn't play, but it doesn't take a PhD in football to know that Christian Turner is an option between the tackles. If he wants to bounce one outside, fine. Jalen Lucas, let him use his speed, get to the perimeter, and go. If you want, Taven Jackson can run a speed option, but throw the speed option to Jalen Lucas in the backfield, not to pair the speed option with Jalen Lucas in the backfield, not Christian Turner. And that's what really frustrates me, because I saw so much progress from this team in the second half against Louisville, and they're not a bad offense. Indiana's offense in 2021 was a bad offense.
Yeah.
This offense is not a bad offense. They are capable of scoring points. Now, we've only seen 3 touchdowns in 3 games against FBS opponents before overtime. I'm not in 3 regulations against FBS opponents. And that's concerning. But all the underlying metrics say Taven Jackson's good at throwing the football. Cam Camper's great at receiving the football. And Indiana's running game is still behind. Now, all I'm saying is you can focus on your weaknesses all you want for Akron. Now is the time to lean into the strengths of your stars. And I'm comfortable using the word stars on offense. For Taven Jackson, Cam Camper, and Jalen Lucas, get the most out of those 3 guys. You ride or die now. This Big Ten has a lot of winnable games on it. And I was drinking the Kool-Aid Friday night saying that Indiana can make a bowl game because I watched Purdue and they look sloppy. And I watched Wisconsin and they look sloppy. And I watched Illinois and they look sloppy. Michigan State is the worst team in the Power 5, if you ask me. I think Indiana is capable of winning a lot of games on this slate, multiple games in this Big Ten schedule. I think Indiana can get to a bowl game, but you have to do stuff that makes sense. You have to lean into your superstars, your big 3 superstars on offense, because I think all 3 guys can make the NFL. I think all 3 guys can be all Big Ten. I think the offensive line will continue improving. Do the smart, sensible stuff. Don't make me throw the remote at my television by calling 2 runs with Jalen Lucas between the tackles, a speed option to Christian Turner, ignoring Cam Camper in the first half against Louisville, and having Taven Jackson throw interceptions right down the linebacker's throat. That's what pisses me off.
I have never understood the coaching philosophy of trying to work on your weaknesses. Here's the thing. You can work on your weaknesses, but then you never fortify your strengths. Like, go with your strengths, man. Like, how hard is it to just do something well and not try to well-round yourself? Like, not every team is perfect, right? And you're going to have weaknesses. Now, it's good to identify weaknesses, right? It's good to understand what you're not good at, but that doesn't necessarily mean you need to work on that thing, because sometimes your weaknesses are just your weaknesses. They are never going to be strengths. They're never going to be neutrals. This team is never going to be able to run the ball well. It's not going to happen, okay? They just don't have the personnel for it. Right.
You know who has there are 2 teams right now in college football that stand out to me as teams that are close to the top in the frequency of which they throw the frequency by which they throw the football. Western Kentucky and Washington throw the football almost more than any team in college football. And they are teams that are consistently leading. They are teams that are going to end up winning 10 plus games this year. And I know Western Kentucky's dropped a couple, but I think they're going to win out from this point on. They know what they do well.
Yeah.
Lean into it.
Yeah.
And that, of course, didn't even get into the Washington conversation. Washington is the 12th highest passing rate in college football. They throw the ball 60% of the time. They don't care if they're up 30. They don't care if it's a close game. They don't care if it's the first quarter or the end of the game. They throw it. They do it well. Next year, it may be different. Just focus on what works.
But they're good at running the ball too, Nithin. They're good at running the ball because teams are so afraid of them passing the ball.
It works. It helps the other part.
Strength, right? They lean into their strength and it helps their weakness, which is that if Washington was a run-first football team, they would not be as good as they are because they throw the ball 60% of the time. It's not rocket science to call plays that you are good at. Is Indiana good at running Jalen Lucas between the tackles? No. Are they good at running the speed option to anybody but Jalen Lucas? No. So why do it? It doesn't make sense.
And then meanwhile, you have Cam Camper out here getting 3 or 4 catches a game when I think he's got to be someone that gets 8 to 10 catches a game. On that aspect
8 to 10 targets a game. It doesn't have to be 8 to 10 catches. But guess what? He's good enough. If you throw the ball to him 10 times, guess what? He most likely catches it 10 times.
Now, I'm gonna be clear here. Okay, I gotta be fair. It's not all on Walt Bell because Indiana's players on Saturday night also their mind was somewhere else. Like you saw frequent drops in the passing game. You saw Donovan McCulley do it. DeKeith Carter had a drop. Bradley Archer, I believe, had his hand on a 4th down that he couldn't reel in.
That Donovan McCulley drop was sent.
That's all I'm saying. And I do believe I'm a proponent more than others, I think, of like the first couple of drives really establishing a tone over the course of the game. The first couple of drives, the first quarter of a game shows me what you preached, what you practiced, what you enforced during the week leading up to that game. And I understand a lot of folks will tune into a football game for the final few minutes because it's likely close. And then, hey, that's winning time. We saw it in the Louisville game. But the first quarter, to me, I care so much about how the team executes and how the team game plans for an opponent, and then how a team's vibes are coming off the field. How focused are they? And Indiana didn't have any of that, and the players are who I'm looking at for this, because from an offensive standpoint, I didn't see enough from the receiving core. I thought Taven Jackson was a little slow to go through his progressions. I thought Christian Turner was a little bit indecisive when he ran the football until the touchdown. I needed Indiana overall to have a completely different approach to Saturday night. Matt, and you and I talked last week on this podcast. We wanted Indiana to go up 28-0 in the first quarter. We wanted Taven Jackson to light up the building, even though Kentucky took some time to slow boil against Akron before winning by 30. We said, hey, this is a chance where you carry over that mojo from the Louisville game to the beginning of Akron, and you make Akron regret coming to Memorial Stadium and getting the paycheck. You make them wish they played Michigan State instead of at Indiana this year. And Indiana did none of that. And Akron should have won the game. Akron outgained Indiana by 200 yards. Akron outpossessed Indiana by 9 minutes. They had a 32-yard field goal to win the game, and it was hooked. In another alternate universe, that field goal goes in. I'm not sure if Indiana doesn't have some major administrative news breaking on Sunday. Look, nothing overall came out of that game. No one lost their job. Nothing happened there. We'll pay attention on Saturday. If anything gets reassigned, we'll be there on behalf of Indiana HQ. I'll be there covering the game. So all of you have someone in person at, I believe it's Capital One Field in College Park to watch this game Saturday. But all in all, it was just sloppy. It was underwhelming. It was unfocused. It was humiliating for a lot of fans who were the diehards. And I hope Tom Allen and Walt Bell and Chad Wilt and Matt Guerrieri and the entire roster looked around Memorial Stadium on Saturday night after they won. And I wish they would have gone and thanked every single one of those people in attendance in person, because those are the diehards. You can say whatever you want to say. There's a lot of narrative nationally about whether Indiana's going to do this or going to do that, whether they're going to win a Big Ten game, whether they're not, if they're going to get blown out by Maryland or are they going to even come close against Michigan and Penn State this year? the diehards that were at Memorial Stadium at the end of that game, as they were going back and forth as the teams were alternating the side of the field in overtime play, those are the people who deserve the entirety of the attention from this football staff and the players and the administration. It is for those people that you practice every detail this week and you pay attention to every rep on Saturday afternoon against Maryland, because those folks deserve so much credit to stick through that to the end. For those of you who watched it at home from start to finish, I tip my cap to you, because I agree with Matt and his sentiment. That was really painful to watch. And I think you could argue, I'm not going to go this low because we have seen some awful losses to Rutgers. I saw Indiana lose to Ball State and Bowling Green under Kevin Wilson. That you could argue was the low point. I will say they won, which does like automatically eliminate that from consideration for me. But you could argue that after the way they played against Louisville in that context, that Akron was a low point. I'm not going to go there, but if you did, I wouldn't blame you. Let's talk a little fact or fiction, Matt. We're going to talk about some big picture questions as far as IU football is related. We'll get into a little conversation here, whether it's fact or fiction. Let's start with this. Fact or fiction? Is it's got to be a statement. Tom Allen is more responsible for IU struggles this season than Walt Bell.
Fact.
I think a lot of people would disagree with you.
They would disagree with me, but they would disagree wrongly. Now, here is why this is a fact. Because Walt Bell doesn't exist if it's not for Tom Allen.
Yeah. Can't
there you go.
That.
There you go. We knew who Walt Bell was as a football coach before he got to IU. He won 2 games in his entire coaching career. Okay? We knew this before he got hired. Tom Allen still hired him anyways, right?
Yeah.
And hired him to run a offense that was based on running the option. And we had we went and got a transfer QB from Mizzou that couldn't run.
Well,
okay. And that was last season. Then you go and get an option quarterback this season that can throw the ball, and you still by the way, actually, I'm not even going to call Tavon Jackson an option QB because he's not. He's a pocket passer.
He's in the same mold as like Taulia, Desmond Ritter. Stand tall in the pocket, deliver. If you need to scramble, you can scramble. That's how I look at it.
Yes, but he's not a run option guy. Like, he's never going to blow anybody away with his athleticism. He runs like a 5.2 40. All right. He's not fast. So I mean, he might run a 4.9 or something like that. He doesn't run a 4.4 40, right?
It's not Dexter Williams.
He's not Dexter Williams. Correct. So why are we sitting here kidding ourselves that the option offense is going to work? Now that's not
Dexter Williams. We can have a conversation. We'll see if he makes this shows up. But until then.
But again, it is Tom Allen's fault that Walt Bell's on the sidelines. And I'd like to point this out. Indiana hired or promoted from within after losing Kane Womack and after losing Kalen DeBoer. Neither. Okay, well, technically went and got what's his face from Georgia. That is no longer
Charlton Warren.
Either way, you hired 2 new coordinators after your 2 best coordinators left, and neither of them were even close to being a success.
Yeah.
All right, they were both failures, in fact. And then you wind up with another 2 coordinators. Well, Tom Allen made himself coordinator, in the meantime.
Sure.
One of which is TBD that has looked good. I think the
Matt
Guerrieri is looking as a positive.
Yeah.
And again, Walt Bell has been a complete negative and really just a giant. Why did you even do this in the first place? Baffling decision, to be honest. So I'm starting to think that maybe Tom Allen needs to get canned based solely off his decision making on coordinators, because he is a guy that is only as good as his coordinators. And through 7 seasons at IU, he has had 2 good coordinators. Two. Maybe three
Yeah,
if you're gonna put Gary in there because he's been pretty good
sure.
and has drastically improved this defense.
Yeah.
But especially with bringing in 11 new guys or 10 new guys
Yeah.
because they're bringing back one story. But he's had two good
Can maybe
coordinators.
argue Mark Hagan early in his career as a defensive coordinator. I'm okay if you want to argue that. I'm gonna take the other side of this. So I'm gonna say Walt Bell is more responsible, and the reason for this is strictly based within what I've seen over the course of the 16 games since Walt Bell took over, and that is just wild inconsistencies in the approach between games and even within games, where
Mm-hmm.
I sit here and I've been in person at so many of these, and Charlie, our friend, has been in person for so many of these, and we keep talking, we keep conversing, and you can only ask the players to do so much when, for example, against Louisville, nothing works in the first half. And then you open up the playbook more in the second. You see more pre-snap motion. You see Walt Bell get in his bag in the second half. And you can see why someone would be interested in having him run an offense. You saw, for example, a play against Louisville that crosses off the top of my mind, right? You saw a play where it was a handoff to, I believe it was Josh Henderson off the left side with Jalen Lucas coming around for the end around. Henderson kept it, picked up 7 yards. You saw some really nice. You saw some really nice balls. You saw some really nice balls down the sideline to Cam Camper over the course of the last couple of games. When Walt Bell dials them up, they look pretty good. And
Yep.
so then you get this other side of things where the game plan and the preparation, the adjustments are completely the opposite. And you had an awful half against Michigan State in East Lansing last year to start the game. You had an awful second half against Nebraska in Lincoln last year after you got off to a good start. And I can see how Tom Allen sees a person in Walt Bell who's experienced and has been at a number of different levels in his career, from Group of Five to Power Five, and sit here and say, look, this is someone who can come in and mix things up. And hey, I've seen some good calls that he's brought to the table before. And then you get the entire 60-minute experience, and you ask yourself why you do this in the first place. So I need to see Walt Bell stick to what works. Go with your pre-snap motions, run your perimeter stuff to the faster players, run your between the tackle stuff to the more physical players. Don't be pulling a guard on 4th and inches from the goal line. Go build in a functional quarterback sneak. It's funny, so many people talk about the tush push with the Eagles right now. Indiana was an elite QB sneaking team in 2019. Guys, go watch this team play football in 2019. I know we love
Who
talking
was
about
the
Michael
coordinator?
Penix. I
Who
know
was
we
the
talk about
coordinator?
Michael Penix, and I know we talk about the downfield passing game and Ty Freifogel and Whop Phillier. Nick Westbrook was on the team that year. But no team in college football in 2019 was better in a 3rd and 1 or a 4th and 1 getting the football. It was beautiful to watch. Go watch Indiana's game-winning touchdown against Purdue in the bucket game in 2019. Peyton Ramsey throws, he either runs the ball down to the 1 or throws the ball down to the 1-yard line. And Indiana did this frequently all season. They sped up the tempo, they got under center, and Peyton Ramsey or Penix earlier in the season would push their way into the end zone.
Yep.
It was quick tempo. It was zero count. It was a zero count. Center got the ball, snapped it to the QB, not on 1, not on 2. It's on 0. Got the ball, snapped to the QB. Hunter Littlejohn was the expert. Shout out. I know he pays attention to IU football here. Get the ball to Ramsey. Go get a yard. Boom. First down, touchdown, you name it. Indiana has been an elite. Indiana was almost ahead of the curve in that sense. And now it feels like Indiana's behind on everything. So I'm going to sit here. I sit here, and I know it's questionable, some of the hirings from a coordinator standpoint that Tom Allen's made. I'm going to say one thing. This is my official stance. I don't think Tom Allen is on the hot seat until the end of the 24 football season. That might upset some of you as far as the buyout's concerned. I don't think Scott Dolson is going to make a move between now and the end of the 24 season. So maybe IU finds a different play caller next year. But until then, I need to see Walt Bell fix this offense by doing what works. The passing game is one of the best in college football. It's not a joke. Taven Jackson grades out very well in PFF. Cam Camper does as well. The success rate, the yards per attempt are all there. Throw the football. That's how you get the job done this year. I'm going to be paying attention to see whether or not Indiana does that. The next one here, Matt. Fact or fiction? Indiana has multiple NFL draft picks on this roster.
I think it's a fact. I'll tell you that on multiple sides of the ball. I think I don't think Cam Camper is going to be one this year just because he's older. A lot of people don't really. He's not going to really have the production, especially if things continue to go the way they are. And he's coming off a couple injuries, right? So he's not going to get the Jalen Lucas's will be.
I agree.
And I think Andre Carter is.
Yeah.
On the defensive end, I wouldn't be surprised if Nick Toomer is the way he looked, especially against Ohio State.
Aaron Casey's an interesting conversation.
Aaron Casey's, especially the way Indiana linebackers have been playing in the NFL as of recently. Shout out Micah McFadden. Yep.
Woo.
So I don't think it's crazy to think there's multiple NFL draft picks on both sides of the ball.
That's why you want to pull your hair out whenever you see a game like Akron, a team that I don't think has an NFL draft pick. I do agree. I think I think Akron has a defensive end that could make it. CJ Null is pretty solid. But overall, I agree. I think Indiana has multiple draft picks on this roster. In addition to the guys that you mentioned, I think maybe in a year or two, Carter Smith, Indiana's left tackle, can put his name in the conversation. He's gotten off to a good start this year. We'll see what Khalil Benson can do over the course of the rest of the season. When he's on, he's really on. He really sets the tone for Indiana up front. I'm looking forward to seeing what, in addition to Cam Camper and Jalen Lucas, to seeing what Josh Henderson can do over the course of the rest of the year. If he can show a little bit of explosiveness, a little bit of better decisiveness when he runs the football, I think there's a conversation there. And that doesn't even get to the Taven Jackson piece. Again, it wouldn't be this upcoming year, but hey, maybe in a couple seasons on the right trajectory, could we see Taven get drafted? I think that is certainly within the realm of possibilities. So looking forward to seeing how that shakes out. Matt and I both think Indiana's got multiple NFL draft picks on this roster, and that's why the first half against Louisville and the entire game against Akron were infuriating. Who won the week this past week in IU sports, folks? Let's switch gears quickly before we get back to previewing Maryland. We're going to tip our cap to the IU women's soccer team. And folks, the IU women's soccer team is absolutely dominating right now. They have worked their way into the top 20 of the college soccer polls. The Hoosiers have gotten off to an undefeated start, ranking number 16 in the United Soccer Coaches poll. A poll, by the way, where the Indiana men's soccer team is unranked. The Hoosiers are outstanding this season, putting together a 9-0-2 record. They're 3-0 in conference play. They've won 6 in a row. Matt and I mentioned this on a previous podcast. Paige Weber, for our money, is the most underrated student athlete on campus at Indiana. All she does is score goals. The Hoosiers are absolutely flying right now, and they take on Ohio State tomorrow night. That's Thursday night on Big Ten Plus, and then return home for a Sunday afternoon matchup against Minnesota. Ohio State and Minnesota, a couple of unranked teams. The Hoosiers knocked off a ranked Northwestern squad in Bloomington on Sunday, winning 1-0. All sorts of improvement, progress you're seeing from the women's soccer program. Jamie Gerstenberg is a goalkeeper whose name you should know if you don't already. She's been excellent this season. And of course, you talked about Paige Weber, who didn't score against Northwestern, but she had 4 shots of her own. Hope Paredes scored the big goal against the Wildcats, and she deserves a shout out there. Folks, if you'd like to subscribe to our podcast for free, all you have to do is search for the Hoosier Sound wherever you listen to podcasts. Stay up to date with all of our information by following us on Twitter at Indiana HQ and at the Hoosier Sound. If you enjoy our show, leave us a review, tell a friend, share our links. Your support really helps us grow this podcast and reach more passionate IU fans such as yourself. Look, we go in person to every game on the schedule, and it's going to continue this Saturday. as the Hoosiers take on the Maryland Terrapins. We're going to talk about that game in just a moment. Matt, a couple more fact or fiction questions here. How about this one? Fact or fiction? IU's success this season hangs on the offensive side of the ball, not the defensive.
This is a tough question because I would like to agree that that's a fact. However, I think this defense is good enough when they play well to actually carry games. And again, you go and look around the Big Ten. Michigan State's offense is atrocious. Illinois is not that far behind.
No, it's not good.
Wisconsin also is not that far behind. So again, the offense does not need to score a lot. The defense
Rutgers still struggling from the offensive side too. Their defense.
Their running game is pretty elite, to be honest. Which Indiana clearly has struggled with running QBs. But that's TBD. We'll see what that matchup is like. But I do think for offenses that don't have a dynamic quarterback, Indiana is going to be an elite defense. And I see a lot, again, elite QB play in this conference is hard to come by. I mean, it is really, I mean, Drew Aller, McCarthy, McCord, even though, but I don't see the McCord. I really don't. I don't see it.
I don't see it. I think Talia deserves a shout.
Talia deserves a shout, absolutely. But I mean, you can add McCord. There's only 4 good QBs, and once you get past that 4, there is a lot of garbage.
Well, and there's no one who's really intriguing. I would say maybe Gavin Wimsatt at Rutgers and Taven Jackson are sort of two like underdeveloped guys, and maybe that's where maybe they can step up. But I think there's just a lot of old, boring quarterbacks.
Tanner Mordecai, I haven't seen one good thing out of him.
He ran for 2 touchdowns against Purdue. I guess shout out to him for doing that. Yeah. Here we go. That was a little bit of a technical glitch there, but we're back. All right.
Nebraska's bad, like all over the place,
it's just
especially at QB.
Yeah. And so, in a nutshell, like
Indiana's got winnable games. So I think it's fiction. I think the offense can beat shit. Sorry, no. The offense can be crap the rest of the year, and this team can still make a bowl game based on how the defense is playing.
I'm gonna say it's a fact. I think Indiana's offense is going to drive the train here. I understand the defense can do some good things, and Indiana's going to have to rely on players like Lewis Moore, who it's been far too long on this episode before we've said his name. Players like him to not only pick passes off, but when he has a chance to take it to the house. Same thing with Nick Toomer. Same thing with Aaron Casey, Jacob Mangum-Farrar. If they get their hands on the football, take it to the house. Andre Carter, I don't want to just sack quarterbacks. I want him to sack strip quarterbacks. You can poke the ball out. I think the defense has a lot of upside, but to me, there's so much untapped upside with this offense where I think the defense, we know they can consistently bring a good product to the table outside of what happened against mobile QBs. There's so much upside. I am a vehement believer in the cast of players on this IU offense. I really am. I love Taven Jackson's arm. I think he's someone who, with the right coaching and the right development, can become an NFL quarterback. I think Jalen Lucas, Josh Henderson, Cam Camper, Donovan McCulley, DeKeys Carter, EJ Williams when healthy, Bradley Archer, James Bamba, Aaron Steinfeld. I think this is an offense where you have more than enough to score 30 points a game with. Now the question is, can you dump the plays that don't work, stop running the option, find out some kind of functional, reliable play or two from the 1-yard line? Well, if you can, then Indiana's going to have, I think, a fairly successful season.
Spoiler alert, Spoiler alert, the staff has not shown the ability to do that. And believing in something that hasn't happened is like asking for a miracle. It would be a miracle if it happened at this point. Sorry.
Fact or fiction? Indiana wins a Big Ten game this year.
If this is not a fact, I'm going to hurl myself out my second floor window.
Oh, no. Don't do that.
Onto a mattress, of course.
No, good. Yeah.
In game. No, I mean, there are too many bad teams on the schedule for this not to be a fact. If Indiana does not beat Michigan State this year, there are problems. And you mentioned that Tom Allen's not going to be fired until the end of the 24 football season.
I don't think it's happening.
If he doesn't win a Big Ten game this year, he better be out the door after the last second of Saturday night. After Saturday night against Purdue. He better be given a nice, very firm, confident handshake and been told, see ya. That has to happen. I mean, the program cannot take another 3-9 season. It just can't at this point.
Shout out to I think it's Mason Williams who had this first over on social media, who reported a quite bizarre incident at Tom Allen's radio show tonight when an IU fan stepped up to a podium to ask a question, didn't ask a question, and ranted about IU's play calling, and then said it's a business and walked away. Not great right now in Hoosier land when it comes to IU football. I think they get Big Ten wins this year. I do. I really, really do. Of course, Indiana went 0-9 in Big Ten play back in 2021. Found a couple of wins in 2022 against a couple of teams. Against Illinois ended up being pretty good. Michigan State, who overall was a functional team last year until the very end of the season. And so I think IU finds a couple. I don't know where exactly, but I'm going to say one thing. This team, regardless of what happened Saturday night, they have got to have unwavering belief in themselves that they can win every game that they play this year. If you don't have it against Michigan and Penn State, I get it. Outside of that, there's 6 other games on this slate that you can win. But you have to believe in yourself. You got to be ready to go, and you got to be ready to execute for 60 minutes. Call the plays that help you win. I asked all of you a variation of that question over on our Hoosier Sound Twitter page, our weekly podcast poll. How many Big Ten wins for Indiana football this season? 0, 1, 2, or 3+? Right now, 1 is the leader at 34%. 2 is next up at 31%. 18% of the voters say Indiana is going to win 3 or more. And then 17% of you say Indiana is going to go winless in Big Ten play. Shout out to Chap, because it's 10 conference wins. I think it's a little aggressive. Chap. Funny. We're gonna
Chap is just don't mind him.
We're gonna give Crimson a few other comments here. Shout out. How about Crimson official Sim, who says, I'm very hopeful to go 2-1 between Illinois, Purdue, and Michigan State. Robert Holbrook says Michigan State, maybe Purdue. Tyler says he's going to be optimistic and say 1. So you can feel the disgruntled frustrations among Hoosier fans right now. The votes are flying in. If you haven't voted yet, make sure you head over to our Twitter poll at the Hoosier Sound. We also shared it over on Indiana HQ. If we like your comment, we'll shoot you a retweet your way and broadcast your opinion to the thousands and thousands that follow us. Matt, let's take a look at this Indiana-Maryland game. It's a 3:30 kick on Big Ten Network Saturday afternoon in College Park. The Hoosiers are a 14-point underdog with an over-under at 50. Indiana lost single possession games to Maryland in both 21 and 22. The Terps are 4-0 this year with basically the weakest strength of schedule in the FBS. They have a great offense with Taulia Tagovailoa manning the ship at quarterback. He's great this year, throwing the ball to Jay Sean Jones, Caden Prather. There are some weaknesses with this Maryland team on both sides of the football. They're not in the top 25 right now. They might be peeved at that. I'm not sure. But this is a Maryland team that, has had some shaky moments this year against Charlotte, against Virginia. But at the end of the day, they are 4-0. I'm going to toss it over to you, Matt. But fun stat here, you won't hear anywhere else on TV. You won't hear ESPN mention it. You won't hear Fox mention it, BTN, any one of the big publications that cover this football team. Only here. How about this? Indiana had 10 offensive touchdowns in Big Ten play in 2021. 10 offensive touchdowns in 9 games. 4 came against Maryland. In 2022, Indiana had 23 offensive touchdowns in 9 Big Ten games. 4 came against Maryland. So the Hoosiers have compiled 8 offensive touchdowns over the last 2 years against the Terps out of the 33 that they've scored in the entirety of the 18 conference games that they've played. They've put up 30 points in each of the last 2 years. Of course, the 2020 game was the one that may have represented the turning point for both of these programs. As not Indiana did win, but Michael Penix suffered a brutal injury on a scramble down the right sideline. We're not going to remember that too much here. But switching it over to you here, Matt, your general thoughts here about the Terps. We talked about how great Talia is at slinging the football, slinging the pigskin around the field. What should the folks listening to this podcast know about the Maryland Terrapins?
They're a good football team, and they should be ranked. And as far as the Big Ten goes, I think they are number 4. As I think they're right below the big 3 at the top. I think they're better than any team out the West.
Oh, sad. How unfortunate.
I know, which is not a surprise to anybody who's followed Big Ten football for the last 5 years because the West sucks. But Talia is probably the 3rd best quarterback in the league.
I agree.
And they have some dynamic wide receivers. They have some decent players on defense. Actually, they have some really good players on defense filled in with a bunch of subpar players on defense. So they have some hard carries on defense. And they've been a little bit inconsistent, but still won by 30 every game. So take that as you will. I said this before, that this Indiana defense is going to be very good as long as the other team doesn't have a dynamic QB. This team has a dynamic QB. And so therefore, Indiana will get scored on a lot this game. And it's not really going to be the defense's fault because the offense is also going to allow this defense to be on the field a lot this game. And when that happens, it's usually a recipe for disaster for the defense. So I don't like Indiana in this one. I think the 14 line is probably a bit generous. I think Indiana's probably going to lose by 3 touchdowns plus. And it's not going to be pretty, given the performance that we saw on Saturday. And I think a lack of detail and a lack of preparation probably comes back to bite this Hoosier team in the dust yet again. And Maryland gets off to a hot start at home and never looks back.
And that's interesting because they've gotten off to some very slow starts this year against much worse teams. For example, in Charlotte, it was the 49ers who got out to a 14-0 lead at the end of the first quarter. Charlotte actually led 14-9 at halftime. They trailed Maryland 17-14 after 3 quarters before the Terps pulled away. Virginia also held a first quarter lead of 14-0 in College Park before Maryland got a kick return touchdown from Braden Wisłowski, and that set off an avalanche of 42 straight for the Terps. They went to Michigan State. I think Michigan State is a worse football team than Virginia is, and Maryland fittingly destroyed the Spartans over the course of 4 quarters. They have a really, really talented roster. I think Roman Hemby is a halfback who is continuing to emerge in the Big Ten ranks. Their receivers of Jay Sean Jones, Caden Prather are really nice, even though they lost tight end CJ Dupre to Alabama in the offseason in the transfer portal. They lost Rakeem Jarrett. They lost Dante Demas to the NFL. They still have a pretty impressive group of offensive players, strong left tackle, strong left side of the offensive line in general. Defensively, Bo Braid is a safety who's going to cause Taven Jackson a lot of problems. That's going to be a matchup I'm going to look forward to seeing. Walt Bell, Taven Jackson against safety Bo Braid. Linebacker Ruben Hippolyte is really solid. Their secondary has a couple of real dangerous pieces as well. Not only do they have Braid, Tarheeb still is a corner who may get matched up quite frequently against Cam Camper. Looking forward to seeing that matchup. And their pass rusher, Quayshawn Fuller, off to a great start this year. He probably deserves more than the 1 sack that he has on his ledger. Probably deserves more. Although I will say Carter Smith this year has shown to grade out very well when you look at some advanced stats on the offensive line. Indiana's young left tackle taking that step forward. If you want to point out Maryland's biggest weakness, it is there's two. First, just totally zero home field advantage. So that's one. The second thing is kicker Jack Howes is 50% on his field goals this year. He's perfect as far as his extra points, but 4 of 8 as far as his field goal kicking is concerned. Leaves a little bit to be desired. They've had a couple of good kickers in the past, like Joseph Petrino. This year, though, Jack Howes not off to the best start. So if Indiana can keep it close, can keep it interesting, I'm willing to have a field goal contest between Chris Freeman and Jack Howes late in regulation or in overtime to see who comes down with the win. So that's one thing Indiana can look forward to. If they're able to keep the game close, if they're able to keep it interesting, well, then you could get yourself in this conversation with potentially a shaky kicker on the Maryland side. The weather is going to be beautiful in College Park Saturday. No, this past Saturday in college football was a little rough to watch, but all in all, we expect to see some nice weather here at the University of Maryland on Saturday afternoon. We're going to ask for predictions and anything else to wrap up this game, give you our Big Ten picks of the week in just a moment. But first, it's time for our social media shout out. We're just going to shout out our stuff here. Indiana HQ is where you can find us on Twitter, Facebook, and YouTube. You can also find us at the Hoosier Sound. On Instagram, Matt, we're not Indiana HQ, but what are we?
Indiana.HQ.
And that's where you can find us on Instagram. All right, Matt, give me your prediction for this game. Who wins and by how much? And give me one Hoosier you're looking forward to watching on Saturday afternoon here against the Terps.
We're going to get Aaron Casey's name called a lot, so...
He needs a bounce-back game. He was not great on Saturday.
He's going to be decent. It's still not going to stop Indiana from losing 31-10 to the Terrapins, and Maryland covered. So
10 points.
Yeah,
Really?
10 points. 10 points, and I think the 7 is going to come up from the defense.
Oh, man. I think this one ends up being kind of high scoring. Those are his last words. I think Maryland wins this one. I'm going to say 38-24. I think Indiana finds some stuff on offense. They keep it interesting. They keep it close. I know that the 14-point margin doesn't do anything as it relates to the spread here for those of you who care about that. I am just a believer in the talent of this offense outweighing the shakiness of the play calling. If I regret those words, I'll be here next week and probably crying myself to a pity. So that's where Matt and I see this game happening. For me, the player I'm paying the most attention to on Saturday is going to be I'll go with Jalen Lucas. The reason I'm thinking Jalen Lucas is that Maryland's got some good pass rushers. Could Indiana invite those pass rushers up the field, maybe drop off a screen or two to Jalen and have him break it loose? Can Indiana take advantage of Jalen Lucas in the return game? We're yet to really see him challenge the end zone with the return this season. He got a big one off against Ohio State. Didn't see one get close to the end zone yet. Looking forward to seeing Lucas potentially do that kind of thing. I have a lot of expectation, of anticipation here as it relates to Jalen Lucas for this matchup on Saturday afternoon. Virginia was able to throw the ball against the Terps a couple of weeks ago. Malik Washington, Virginia's best receiver, had 9 catches for 141 yards in that game. Malachi Fields, their second receiver, had 7 catches for 70 yards in that game. Kobe Pace, our running back, had 4 catches for 28 yards and a touchdown in that game. Their quarterback, Anthony Calandria, threw for 260 yards, even though the Cavs lost. So can throw on these guys. Michigan State can't do anything right, but a couple of these other teams can see are able to throw the football against the Terps. Also looking forward to seeing if Nick Toomer and Josh Henderson make their way back as well. That's how Matt and I feel about this IU Maryland game on Saturday. If the Hoosiers win, we will be having a bonus podcast episode for you after the game. Matt, Indiana Maryland is just one of 7 games on Saturday involving Big Ten teams. There are no Fridays, there are no Sundays, there are no Thursdays. It is strictly a Saturday slate across the Big Ten. There are 2 non-conference games, and there are 5 Big Ten matchups. As you look around, Matt, you know how we do this. We like to give the fans at this point of the podcast 1 or 2 picks against the spread, maybe an upset special as far as this Big Ten slate is concerned. What catches your eye here as far as an over-under, a pick against the spread, an upset pick across the Big Ten?
Well, you should listen to me because I'm on fire this year when it comes to my predictions, including literally predicting almost to the point the Penn State game last week.
It was on fire. You said Iowa would not score. You said Penn State would cover. I said Penn State, Iowa would go under. All 3 of those hit. You also said Notre Dame would beat Ohio State, and they would have if they had one more defensive player on the field.
Or just didn't throw. That game baffles me. Anyways, I was almost so close to getting it right. All right, so this week, not as fun.
It's not.
Not as fun this week. Not as spicy. Penn State, again, covers 27 against Northwestern. And guess what? Northwestern doesn't score a point.
Oh,
nice. At home.
Yeah, great.
In Chicago's Big Ten team, against Penn State. And then I have Michigan going on the road to Nebraska and not covering, but winning that game. So take the money line. I think the over-under is 39, and I think that goes over. I think Nebraska runs the option, which they've been doing the last couple games. That has been working, and it's going to give the Michigan defense fits. And J.J. McCarthy will probably throw 2 picks this game, and they'll still win because Michigan's a much better team, and they're like sleepwalking through the start of the season.
Wonderful. I love to hear that. I'm not sure why Louisiana is getting 11 points in Minneapolis. Like, I don't know if folks just saw the great roller boaters, the Gophers, lose to Northwestern in a game where they led by 21 in the 4th quarter. Louisiana is a proper group of 5 team. They're
spicy.
Feisty. Yeah, they turn out NFL players. Their coach Billy Napier.
They live up to the Cajun name.
They do, and the Ragin name. They get a little crazy at times in a good way, football way. And the Raging Cajuns are 3-1 this year with a 7-point road loss to Old Dominion, which is nothing to be all too upset about. I'm not saying they're going to win necessarily in Minneapolis. I do think they covered the 11 that they're getting right now against Minnesota. And I'm going to take Iowa to cover 12.5. And I think Iowa could win 14-0 with 2 defensive touchdowns, and it wouldn't be the most surprising thing in the world to me. And so I've got Iowa covering 12.5 at home in prime time against Michigan State. Michigan State right now reminds me of the 2021 Indiana football team, and the Indiana football team didn't have a coach get fired for sexual misconduct. So that's how I see the Spartans going forward. If they prove me wrong, shout out to Michigan State. That's how we feel. The Big Ten's going to shake out this week. Just a underwhelming league, man, across the board. Outside of Michigan, Penn State, I'm not crediting Ohio State for anything. I'm just not. I think they were awful against Indiana. I think they were awful against Notre Dame. They won. Shout out to Ryan Day. But I guess if he's saying it's Ohio against the world, he's right. Because right now I'm the world, and I don't like Ohio State.
I don't like Ohio State either, but the defense is good.
Yeah, defense is good. As we wrap up here on this Wednesday night, Matt, any closing thoughts? Any final observations? as the Hoosiers try to get to 3-2 on Saturday.
I am not expecting good things from this football team until proven otherwise, mainly down to offensive play calling that I don't think is going to change, even though we have fans now going to Tom Allen's radio show and ranting about how terrible it is. I just listened to it. Very funny, by the way, and he speaks for all of us in our frustration of watching this. Not that anything, but firing Walt Bell in the middle of the season isn't going to change anything, which sucks. But at the same time, it's kind of like a bit demoralizing, honestly. I was gonna try to silver lining it. I really was gonna try to silver. I can't do it. I can't.
Well, that's how you feel, Matt. Unfiltered, unplugged.
I can't try to put some Smarties in the medicine to sweeten it up.
It's on the team.
It's a tough pill to swallow. It really is. It's just going to suck the rest of the year. The offense is going to be terrible to watch, and I don't think it's going to change. And if it does change, it's a damn miracle. Last thing is IU. Are we like wrapping up the podcast here, or are we talking about? Okay, so basically, IU got some hints at some good news in basketball.
Tantalizing, yeah.
I'll tell you this because it's coming from one of the websites I help run. Burner Ball. By the way, shout out Trilly Donovan. Reliable force. On the insider scoop for college as well. It's Liam McNeely to IU. It's not a mystery at this point. It's something that I've known was a thing that was probably happening since about July. And so I've been waiting for 2 months for Trilly to kind of confirm that was a sort of thing. Now he has confirmed it as of yesterday? 2 days ago?
We're gonna wait for the official announcement though.
Look, it's an 18-year-old kid. It's an 18, not even 17, I think right now. It's a 17-year-old child making
and Bill Self is a gangster. That's what I've heard.
Bill Self does like to drop a bag or two or 20 or a lot, and likes to steal Indiana recruits away.
We got him though.
Indiana has in the past, very recently, gotten a 5-star recruit from under Bill Self's nose. So I would not be surprised if Liam McNeely ends up choosing IU. And you have a podcast, by the way, when that happens, covering Liam McNeely. Instantly. But he is a type of recruit that Indiana has not gotten since I followed the program, which is a 5-star wing that can shoot. I don't remember Indiana getting one of those. I mean, some people will say Mbako is that. Mbako can do a lot of different things, but he's not primarily a knockdown sniper, whereas McNeely is an absolute killer knockdown shooter, which is not something Indiana has recruited all that well as of recently. Hence why we've had 3-point woes. So that is a welcome sign. Now, he can't be the crown jewel of the class. He's got to have some complementary pieces. That's coming in time. I'm not going to say names, but Boogie Fland and another Montverde teammate of his, Derek Queen, might be coming down the pipeline soon for Indiana, and that would mean a top 5 class. And the movement part 2 to Bloomington?
No, we're not doing the movement. No, guys, if you want to know what the movement is, search the movement from 2013, 2012, 2013. Ron Patterson,
it's been
Jeremy
10 years.
Hollowell.
10 years, 10-year reunion.
Shout out to both of them. Hope they're doing well, whatever work life they're in now.
The movement had Yogi Ferrell as a part of it.
Honor Mosquera Perea.
Was Yogi Ferrell was a part of the movement? Was he not?
I thought I gotta look back. I don't know if he was a year early for that. I have to.
Or was that Troy Williams? There was one good player in the movement. There's a lot of not good players, but one good player.
We'll see if we can track that info down.
I'm gonna look it up right now.
But for me, I got an off-topic thing just to wrap up here. Coaching issues aren't just a problem at the IU football program.
Yogi was part of the movement. Thank you. Yeah.
Do you have the other guys in there or no? That was
Peter
entertaining.
Jerkin, Hannah Mascara Perea, Jeremy Hollowell, Ron Patterson.
That was supposed to be the recruiting class that elevated Tom Crean from sort of a program rebuilder to one of the best in the country. And
Yogi worked out.
Yogi worked out. Indiana missed the NCAA tournament in 2013 and then lost to Wichita State in the first round in 2014. 2015 wasn't great. Hey, they won the Big Ten in 16. For me, like, it is shockingly bad to see how awful coaching is right now across college football and the NFL. Like, it is really rough. I mean, we have an experienced, smart coach in Marcus Freeman at Notre Dame, putting 10 guys on the field from a defensive standpoint, and not knowing whether he should take a 6-inch penalty to to get an 11th guy on there. The offensive play calling for Notre Dame before that defensive series was absolutely terrible. I sat here and I watched undisciplined special teams penalties by Virginia, a terrible winless football team, after they're scoring touchdowns. No discipline shown whatsoever from their side. Clemson, what were they huffing at the end of that game against Florida State? Just awful decision making, awful play calling. These coaches go out and spend hours and hours and hours recruiting these players, breaking down tape. They have sleepless nights practicing and preparing and game planning for each opponent. And then when the lights are the brightest, they are absolutely terrible this season. It's shocking to watch, because then you see the other side of the spectrum, which is, the NFL right now. It's Nick Sirianni and it's Mike McDaniel and it's Andy Reid and it's Matt LaFleur. And in college football, you see Kirby Smart obviously do his awesome work at Georgia. You see the improvements that Lincoln Riley has made at USC. You saw the way Dan Lanning for Oregon just crushed the Colorado Buffaloes, who have a coach of their own who's reinvented the program. Sark has done a great job. You're seeing a lot of quality coaching that right now seems to just be a massive competitive advantage. It feels like the average right now, the baseline for coaching is bad coaching. Like, you're seeing a lot of just undisciplined play. You're seeing a lot of horrible 4th down and 2-point decisions and punting decisions. I'm not really sure what goes on behind the scenes at a lot of these programs, but it was just mind-boggling to me to see the awful play calling with Iowa combined with the mental and physical breakdowns at Notre Dame, combined with what Indiana was doing, all happened at the same time. And then I watched Kalen DeBoer, and I was like, wow, like, it's honestly mind-numbing right now to see the awful coaching around college football and the NFL. I think it's worse than it's been in my entire lifetime. I've watched football for almost 30 years. It is absolutely terrible right now. But hey, look, maybe there's some chances here for some people to figure things out as the season goes on. But folks, that about wraps it up for our 308th episode of the Hoosier Sound. Thank you so much for joining us. We really appreciate your support. To hear more fantastic episodes like the one you heard today, be sure to follow us at Indiana HQ and at the Hoosier Sound to make sure you don't miss any in the future. You can also go to our website, indianahq.com, to find it all in one place. But as always, thank you for listening, Hoosier Nation, and we will see you next time.
Peace and love, go Hoosiers.